intense people are difficult to be around for a lot of people because most people aren't very intense. Most people don't take their lives that seriously. Some people become witty about it. Some people become cynical. Some people become boring. I mean, there's a lot of strategies that people use to deal with the basic phenomenon of mortality, of the fact that we're here, we're going to die. And death is very real and very present. Death is present in every moment. And embracing seriousness is really embracing mortality. It's what Heidegger called the being unto death. It's accepting that you're going to die, and it's not becoming morbid about it. It's, I need to prepare, because this journey's coming. And that's really what Imam al-Ghazali is doing, and I think that's what you were trying to get out in the film, is that he was serious. And he's telling us, this thing's too important. Don't miss this opportunity, because you only get it one time. Muslims aren't Hindus. You know, I mean, there's not a second chance, and what you do here is going to return to you in the next life. And the other thing, Imam al-Ghazali, one of the things I was reading, in fact, just a few days ago in Mizan al-Amal. I was on the airplane, and I couldn't put that book down. I just got a critical edition in Egypt, so I was reading it. And one of the things that he said, if we look at what all human beings are looking for, they're all looking for happiness. That's it. You know, in my country's foundational, well, you're from the States, but in our foundational document, which is the Declaration of Independence, you know, Thomas Jefferson said, all men are born with certain inalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it's interesting because that original statement, according to Locke, John Locke, who originally made that statement, said, and the pursuit of property. But Jefferson was a metaphysician. He had a more of a metaphysician's mind than an empiricist. You know, Locke was more in the empiricist tradition. Jefferson understood that really that is the fundamental human reality, is the search for happiness. Now, we have different definitions of happiness, and Imam al-Ghazali goes through each one of them. Some people define happiness as pleasure, but like the Buddhists say, the problem with pleasure is that every earthly pleasure is only temporary. So when I'm eating, I have the pleasure of food, but it comes to an end, and I can't just keep eating because I get full. And I'll actually get sick if I keep eating. The pleasure of sexuality comes to an end, and it's over. And then again, I can't keep doing it because the body can't take it. It's as simple as that. And the pleasure of sleep, somebody said, you know, what is the pleasure of sleep? Is it when you're sleeping? Well, it can't be because you're asleep. So is it before sleep? And then it's not really the pleasure of sleep. Is it after sleep? Then it's not really the pleasure of sleep. So what is it? But we all recognize sleep as a pleasurable thing, the gentle tyrant. So he looks at all these things, and then he quotes Imam Ali, and he said, what a wondrous thing the world is. The greatest, there's only 5 things that everybody really derives pleasure in. Drink, food, scent, cloth, and sexuality. And he said, in the sensory thing, I mean, there's companionship and things like that, those are different, but he's talking about senses. And so he says, the highest drink is water. And he said it's ahqar ashya, it's the least of things in the world. He said the highest food is the vomit of bees, honey. He said the highest cloth is the excrement of worms, which is silk. And then he said the highest smell is the mucus of a gazelle, the musk odour. And then he said, and the greatest pleasure in the world is the meeting of the 2 urinary tracts. So there's the world. So he said that can't be what happiness is. That can't be the ultimate. If it is, I mean, it's a real trick's being played on us. And then he looks at position and wealth and power and all these other things that people pursue. And again, he says the problem with them is that beauty is an intangible. It's in the eye of the beholder. It's something that we can lose at any moment. It's something that the more you examine it, the more elusive it is. You know, if you see a beautiful woman, like Dr. Naqib al-Attas said, if you see a beautiful woman and you take a magnifying glass to try to get a closer look, and suddenly you're at the level of pores, she's no longer beautiful. She's porous. So all of those aspects that people consider happiness. So he says, in the end, what is happiness? Happiness is virtue. Happiness is living a virtuous life. And he says, and virtue is predicated on knowledge and action, right knowledge and right action. And that's where Imam al-Ghazali is also very extraordinary, is one of the things that he hated, Imam al-Ghazali hated the sectarian mind. And the reason he hated the sectarian mind is because he felt the sectarian mind's sickness was it was provincial. The sectarian mind always focuses on one area or aspect and grabs onto that and won't let go. Churchill described the fanatic as somebody who wouldn't change his mind and wouldn't change the subject. And that's the mind that Ghazali hated. And another aspect, because he was a philosopher, in the real true sense of the word, you know, philosophia, the lover of wisdom, he was somebody that was willing to examine a question to its utmost. He wanted to take it as far as you could take it. And because he was willing to do that, if you wanted to talk to him about it, you better have done the same thing, because if you hadn't, he wasn't going to waste his time.
He didn't suffer fools gladly.
He did not suffer fools gladly, because he had done the work, and he expected his interlocutor to have done the work as well. And if you weren't willing to do the work, he wasn't going to waste his time. He had other things to do. And so that's an aspect of him that's really extraordinary, is that his mind was very vast, but he had a large S. He wanted to understand all of these different groups, the botanist and the materialist and the philosophers. In fact, some people criticized his book Maqasid al-Falasifa, which is the ends or aims of the philosophers, because they said that he had understood them so well and then facilitated their thought by explaining them better than they could themselves. So he, in turn, allowed people to have access to their ideas that would not normally have access to their ideas. So he was actually criticized for making the Greek philosophical thought easier to understand. And that was a particular genius that he had, of really being able to clarify things. So he says, if happiness then is knowledge and action, he says what's really intriguing is, for the otherworldly happiness, it's the same. So whether you want worldly happiness or otherworldly happiness, they both are predicated upon knowledge and action. And he said, because people that don't have knowledge are always pursuing things that will lead to unhappiness, because they don't have knowledge. Most people, you ask most people in the world, what do you want? People will always tell you means. They'll never tell you ends. They'll say, I want money. But then if you press it a little further, well, why do you want money? So I can do what I want. Well, why do you want to do what you want? So I don't feel I'm having any constraints. Well, why don't you want to feel like you're having constraints? Because I want to feel free. Well, why do you want to feel you're free? Well, I want to be happy. So when you get to happiness, it's not a means to anything. It's an end in and of itself. And that's what he was saying, is that most people are preoccupied with means, and they've forgotten the end of life. And he was telling us, turn away from the means and seek the end. I mean, that's really at the crux and the heart of his philosophy.